Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever felt like your students are just mindlessly copying things down without actually learning a thing, well, we've all been there. Today, we're going to talk about transforming that classroom board from what is essentially a chaotic dumping ground into your absolute most powerful teaching tool. Because the secret culprit to a confusing lesson might just be sitting right there at the front of your room. Take a quick second to reflect on your own teaching habits. When you uncap that marker, what are you actually doing? Are you just handing out answers like a giant cheat sheet, or are you actively building a sturdy scaffold for your students' understanding? Because honestly, how you use that space directly dictates how your students think, and that is exactly what we're unpacking today.
So, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the board as an underestimated tool, move into some basic foundations, talk about organizing your space, cover some practical writing and timing tips, and wrap up with the interactive learner-centered board. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. An underestimated teaching tool. Let's stop treating the board like a massive, chaotic notepad and start seeing it for what it really is, a visual space that actively shapes how your students process and remember information.
Think about it. A poorly managed, messy board, total cognitive overload. Students have no idea what's a core concept, what's a random example, or what they're even supposed to write down. It just bleeds away your learning time. But an effectively managed board, man, it's like a sigh of relief for the brain. It organizes ideas perfectly, naturally guides their attention exactly where it needs to be, and just smooths out the entire lesson flow.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Foundations of Board Management. Let's take a look at the core blueprint of this strategy.
You've got 3 core pillars to remember here: clarity, economy, and consistency. If your board feels chaotic, I guarantee you're probably skipping one of these. You need clarity so they know where things live, economy so you don't fry their brains with too much info, and consistency so they actually learn your system day in and day out.
Now, a quick side note on economy of information. That doesn't mean just writing less and starving them of context. It means revealing information gradually so you never overwhelm them. You do not need to fill every single inch of white space. Just prioritize the essentials. And if you put your objectives and new vocab in the exact same spot every single lesson, it creates this really comforting, familiar rhythm for the class.
Section 3. Organizing your board space. Knowing those foundations, let's take those theories and get super practical about dividing up your board.
Think of your board like the layout of a really good website. You've got your objective zone. That stays put, visible from minute 1. Then you have your main content zone, which is your active workspace, where you and the students are building the lesson together. And finally, a language focus zone, to anchor those key grammar patterns so they're always there for a quick reference.
When you actually put this into practice, it chunks everything beautifully. You can drop daily vocabulary, like getting up, taking a shower, having breakfast, into a dedicated column on the left, and then use the center and right areas for broader routines and examples. It's so readable. The students' eyes just naturally track exactly where they need to go.
Or we think about setting aside a specific corner entirely for time expressions and examples, leaving the main activity totally uncluttered. If a student suddenly forgets a future tense rule while they're working, they don't even have to raise their hand or interrupt the flow. They just glance at that designated zone. The board is literally doing the teaching for you.
Having a structured layout like this isn't just about making your classroom look pretty. It's a hardcore functional tool. Separating, say, free time activities on one side from targeted Q&A blocks on the other instantly stops concepts from bleeding into one another. It's all about reducing that friction and actively aiding their processing.
Okay, Section 4, Practical Writing and Timing. Because honestly, the best layout in the world won't save you if your physical mechanics are off.
First up, write large, neatly, and legibly. If the kid in the back row is squinting, you've already lost them. But let's talk about color coding, because this is huge. One color equals one specific function. Reserve red specifically for errors, green for corrections, and stick to blue or black for your standard info. Limiting yourself to 2 or 3 colors acts like this subconscious guide for their attention. And please, whatever you do, don't write your main text in red.
Now, this next routine is an absolute game changer. It's called the shadow check. You write, you pause, turn to face the class, check that they can actually see what you wrote, and then immediately step aside. Don't be that teacher talking to the whiteboard in the dead zone. Try a side saddle stance. That way, you're maintaining eye contact while still managing the board.
And timing? Timing is everything. Get those complex vocab words or objectives up before the bell even rings. But, and this is a massive but, you have to build the main content during the lesson alongside your class. Don't reveal the punchline before they've had a chance to discover it.
Oh, and always give them a solid 30 seconds to finish copying before you erase anything.
Section 5. The Interactive Learner-Centered Board. This is where we transition from a passive display into a highly active, collaborative canvas. This is where good teachers become great.
If you're the only person touching the markers, you're leaving so much potential on the table. The board has to be a hub of activity. When you get students up there, brainstorming, making corrections, throwing up their own examples, their engagement absolutely skyrockets. They stop being passive observers and actually take ownership of the lesson.
It really comes down to a choice between doing all the heavy lifting yourself, which just creates a passive environment, versus guiding the students to actually do the work. The difference in their retention is basically night and day. Let's break that down for a second. A passive display is when you write a full completed sentence, they copy it down, and zero critical thinking happens. But active eliciting, that's where the magic is. You write an incomplete prompt. You ask targeted questions. You make them supply the language and recall the rules. You're forcing them to do the cognitive heavy lifting.
And that brings us to our ultimate golden rule. The single most important thing to remember every time you pick up a dry erase marker or a piece of chalk: the board acts as a scaffold, not a cheat sheet. It's there to support their climb to understanding, not to just charter them a helicopter to the top.
So I want to leave you with this to chew on. Tomorrow morning, when you walk into your classroom and uncap that marker, are you going to just display information for them to mindlessly copy? Or are you going to use your board to build knowledge together with real clarity and genuine interaction? The choice is literally in your hands. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and happy teaching.